Every single financial advisor you have ever seen, every personal finance book sitting on a bestseller shelf, every well-meaning parent who ever sat you down to talk about money, they all told you the same thing. Save 10% of your paycheck. Invest it in a mutual fund. Wait 40 years. Retire rich. That is the plan. That is the road. That is what responsible, financially literate people do. But here is the thing that nobody in that entire conversation ever told you. That plan does not make you rich. That plan makes you old. And by the time you figure out the difference, most of your most productive years are already behind you. There is a wealth equation that the genuinely rich use that is so different from what you have been taught that when you first see it, it feels like you have been lied to your entire life. Because you have been. Not maliciously, not intentionally, but the advice you received was designed for a different outcome than the one you actually want. You do not want to retire at 67 with enough to survive. You want to be 30 years old and free. You want the kind of wealth that gives you options while you are still young enough to enjoy them. And the path to that kind of wealth is not the one you were handed. Today we are going to break down the exact wealth equation that separates the people who get rich young from the people who spend 40 years hoping the math works out in the end. And once you see it, you will never look at money the same way again. Let us start with the equation you were given. The Slowlane equation. It looks like this: you trade your time for money, you save a percentage of what you earn, you invest it in something that returns 8% per year on average, and you wait. The core variable in this equation is hours worked. You have 24 hours in a day. Realistically, you can work 8 to 12 of them. That is your ceiling. That is the absolute maximum upper limit of what this equation can ever produce for you. 12 hours multiplied by whatever hourly rate you can command. And here is the brutal mathematics of that ceiling. A lawyer billing $400 an hour working 12 hours a day earns $4,800. Impressive by most standards. But it is still capped. The moment they stop working, the clock stops. The income stops. The equation stops. And no matter how skilled they become, no matter how many years of experience they accumulate, the ceiling of 24 hours a day never moves. You can get more valuable per hour, but you cannot get more hours. That is the trap hiding inside the advice that sounds like wisdom. Now here is the Fastlane equation. Wealth equals net profit plus asset value. And underneath that equation are two variables that change everything. Net profit equals units sold multiplied by unit profit. Asset value equals net profit multiplied by an industry multiplier. Read those two equations slowly and let them land, because this is where the entire game changes. The variable that determines your income is not hours worked. It is units sold. And units sold has a ceiling determined not by the number of hours in a day but by the size of your market. Think about what that means for a single second. If you build an internet business and 12,000 people visit your website on any given day, your upper limit of units sold is 12,000. Not 12. 12,000. And if that number grows to 50,000 visitors per day, your upper limit grows with it. The ceiling is not fixed. The ceiling is not 24 hours. The ceiling is the size of the market you can reach. And in a world with internet access, that ceiling is effectively unlimited. This is not theory. This is arithmetic applied to reality. The person who built this internet company had a unit profit of approximately $4 per web conversion. At 12,000 visitors per day with a 12% conversion rate, the daily income was already extraordinary. But here is where the controllable unlimited variable becomes the most powerful concept in wealth building. When conversion rate moved from 12% to 13%, just one single percent, daily income jumped by $480 per day. That is $14,400 per month from 1%. When conversion reached 15%, income exploded past $43,000 per month. The same 1% improvement in a traditional job means asking your boss for a raise and being told the budget does not allow for it this year. In the Fastlane equation, a 1% improvement in a variable you control means tens of thousands of dollars in additional monthly income. That is the difference between a system that works for you and a system where you work for the system. And once you truly understand the difference, it is impossible to unsee. So now you understand the core of the wealth equation. Units sold multiplied by unit profit determines net profit. And net profit has an unlimited ceiling constrained only by market size, not by the hours in your day. But this is only half of the equation. The second half is where ordinary wealth becomes extraordinary wealth. And it is called asset value. And almost nobody in the personal finance conversation ever talks about it honestly. Here is what a survey of 3,000 people with a net worth of $5 million or more actually revealed. Almost all of them made their fortunes in a big lump sum after a period of years. Not by saving 10% of their paycheck for 40 years. A big lump sum. And 80% of them either started their own business or worked for a small company that saw explosive growth. None of them had a cushy union job. None of them were waiting on a pension. The primary wealth accelerant of the genuinely rich boils down to one concept: appreciable and controllable assets. Asset value is simply the worth of any property you own that has marketplace value. And the way the rich build wealth is by building assets that appreciate and then selling those assets in the marketplace for a lump sum that changes their financial position permanently. This is where the Slowlaner and the Fastlaner have two completely different and antagonistic relationships with the word asset. The Slowlaner buys and sells depreciating assets. Cars, boats, electronics, designer clothes, things that lose value the moment the transaction is complete. Every purchase is an asset moving in the wrong direction on the wealth equation. But the Fastlane buys and sells appreciating assets. Businesses, brands, cash flows, intellectual property, licenses, patents, real estate, things that gain value over time and can be sold in the marketplace for multiples of what was invested to build them. This is not a small distinction. It is the entire game. Spending money on things that lose value is the slow lane. Building things that gain value and can be sold is the fast lane. And the mathematics of the difference will shock you when you see them clearly. Asset value equals net profit multiplied by the industry multiplier. What is an industry multiplier? When a company has sustainable profits, buyers in the marketplace will pay a multiple of those profits to acquire the asset. That multiple is determined by the industry you are operating in. In some industries, the multiple is 3. In others, it is 17. This means that every single dollar of net profit you generate does not just equal $1 of wealth. It equals $3 of wealth, or $6, or $17, depending on your industry. If you own a manufacturing company that generates $100,000 in net profit per year, and the average multiple in your industry is 6, your asset is worth $600,000. You have turned $100,000 of annual profit into $600,000 of asset value. That is not saving 10% of a paycheck. That is wealth acceleration at a factor of 600%. And every incremental dollar of profit you add to that business adds $6 to the value of the asset you own. Let us make this even more concrete with the wealth acceleration factor, the WAF. Suppose you are an engineer at a large corporation. You have been there 3 years. You diligently save 10% of your paycheck and invest it in a mutual fund earning 8% per year. Your wealth acceleration factor is 8%. Now suppose instead you quit that job and use your 3 years of engineering experience to start a company manufacturing medical devices. Your total potential market is 16 million people. The average industry multiplier for medical devices is over 17. That means within the scope of your wealth acceleration you can grow wealth at a factor of 1700%. Your wealth acceleration factor is 1700% versus 8%. The same person, the same skills, the same starting point, 2 completely different wealth equations, and 2 completely different destinations. One plan is about hope. Hope the boss gives you a raise, hope the company does not lay you off, hope the mutual fund returns 8% for 40 consecutive years. The other plan is about control. Control your variables. Control your ceiling. Control your outcome. One plan makes millionaires in 40 years. The other makes millionaires in 4. We have covered both sides of the wealth equation now. Net profit through unlimited units sold. Asset value through industry multipliers that turn every dollar of profit into multiple dollars of wealth. But understanding the equation is only the beginning. Because there is a final dimension of the Fastlane wealth system that is responsible for the moments when ordinary people become extraordinarily wealthy seemingly overnight. It is called the liquidation event. And it is the mechanism that transforms paper wealth into real money that actually changes your life. Here is the distinction that most people never understand. When you build a business that generates significant net profit, the industry multiplier makes that business worth far more than the annual income it produces. But that asset value is paper value until you liquidate it, until you sell it. A company worth $18 million on paper with a bank account showing $10,000 in cash is not an $18 million lifestyle. It is a paper valuation. Real wealth, the kind that lets you buy what you want, go where you want, and never work again unless you choose to, comes from turning that paper valuation into real money through a liquidation event. This is why the rich accelerate wealth by building cash-flowing assets and then selling those assets in the marketplace to realize the gains. Building the asset is how you create wealth on paper. Selling it is how you make it real. The story of Sheila Hinton illustrates this perfectly. She was 24 years old when she quit her job to become a roving computer technician, fixing viruses and cleaning computers. At first, her business operated locally in her metropolitan area, but growth forced her to hire additional technicians. Then growth forced expansion into additional cities. In a few years, Sheila owned a company operating in 27 states. She moved from technician to facilitator of the system. Her company generated $2.9 million in profit. She saved most of it. And then she sold her company for $24 million to a large computer manufacturer. She built an asset from nothing. The asset was her system. And with a $30 million nest egg, she never had to work again. 24 years old to financially free through a single liquidation event. Not 40 years of 10% savings. Not hope. A system. An asset. A sale. That is the Fastlane in action. Now contrast this with the story of someone who built an asset and failed to liquidate at the right moment. John built a social networking website that went viral. Millions of people were using his service. Despite having no revenue and no profit, John had built an asset with marketplace value. He received a $640 million offer from a major search engine. He declined. He believed his business would be worth more once it started generating revenue. But 18 months later, his social networking service fell out of fashion. The company became worthless. He eventually sold at a fire sale price of $2.5 million. His poor timing cost him more than $600 million. The lesson here is not just that liquidation events create wealth. It is that they require timing and they require recognizing when the asset value is at its peak. Paper millionaires who cannot execute the exit remain paper millionaires. Real wealth requires the transaction. This is the dual-flanked attack that makes the Fastlane wealth equation so powerful and so different from everything you have been taught. When you pursue net profit aggressively, two things happen simultaneously. Your income grows, and your asset value grows with it, multiplied by the industry factor you are operating in. Every dollar of profit improvement creates multiple dollars of asset value improvement at the same time. When net profit rose and the business was eventually sold for millions after being purchased for $250,000, the entire result came from manipulating controllable variables, expanding the customer base, reducing expenses, improving profitability, streamlining operations to create passivity. Each move improved net income. Each improvement in net income multiplied through the asset value equation. The plan did not control the outcome. The person controlling the plan controlled the outcome. And this brings us to the contrast that makes everything you have ever been told about money finally make sense. The Slowlane plan, save 10%, invest in mutual funds, wait 40 years, hope for 8% returns, gives you a wealth acceleration factor of 8%. It operates on hope. It operates on a ceiling of 24 hours per day. It operates on variables you cannot control. Your boss decides your raise. The market decides your return. The economy decides your job security. None of the variables belong to you. But the Fastlane equation, units sold multiplied by unit profit creating net profit multiplied by industry multiplier creating asset value realized through liquidation events, operates on control. Your market size determines your ceiling. Your conversion rate determines your income. Your profit drives your asset value. Your timing of the exit determines the lump sum that changes your life. Every variable is yours. Every lever is yours to pull. Some 30-year-olds are worth $50 million. Some are worth 13,000. The universe operating on gains of 1,700% and millions makes the first possible. The universe operating on 8% and 40 years produces the second at best. Both paths are available to you right now. The only question is which wealth equation you choose to build your life around. The one that makes you rich over 40 years of hoping everything goes right, or the one that makes you wealthy while you are still young enough to enjoy what wealthy actually means. More money will never be the answer if you keep using the wrong equation. Change the equation and you change everything.